Time for our mini session. Welcome everyone who's just jumping on. This mini session is building custom electronic forms with delivered 9.2 tools. The first thing I'll mention is we build custom electronic forms all day long, and we have a delivered electronic forms tool set called GTE forms, which I will mention at the end. But we're answering the question here, well, how do we build custom forms if we don't have GTE forms or another form building tool? How do you build custom electronic forms using the delivered tools in 9.2? Because there's kind of a suite of tools, and it can be confusing to know which tool to use and what to expect when you are developing using those tools. So first off, this is our last mini session, but if you see any of these mini sessions and think that is one that I really want to see, we'll be sharing the recordings for all of these sessions in a post-conference email. Scott will post a link in the chat to our registration page where you can sign up for our drawing to win a $100 Amazon gift card, but that would also put you in the list to receive our post-conference email, and that will have links to all of these sessions, to recordings of all these sessions. So it's not too late if you see one that you want to go to and that you missed. Okay, so jumping right in. What is a custom form? The definition we'll be using today is, first off, custom means it's not a delivered PeopleSoft transaction. We're going to assume that it starts with a mobile UI that's accessible to casual users, that it delivers reasonably robust functionality, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means, that it facilitates mobile approvals, and that it updates a delivered PeopleSoft component. Now, that last one isn't a requirement. We do a lot of forms that don't update components, but most custom forms will. So we're considering how can we accomplish all of these things with the tools that are delivered with 9.2. So these are the tools that we will speak to briefly: the fluid interface, activity guides, the approval framework or AWE, fluid approvals, and page composer. Those are all components of the solution or of the best practices approach that I'm going to outline here. This is what we're not covering. We're not covering Forms and Approval Builder. You can build custom forms with Forms and Approval Builder, but it does not meet the reasonably robust standard. So once you get past just gathering basic information, if you get to where you need to pre-populate the form or have grids or have dynamic behavior on the form where fields change or hide or unhide, it's not a tool that's built for that. It's really built for basic data entry. So we're not going to review that. We're not going to review HCM guided self-service. It is configurable, but it's not custom. We're not going to review field and page configurator. It's an awesome tool, and you can use it to configure delivered pages, but not to build new pages and forms. And we're talking about custom forms. So those are the ones we're not going to touch. They have their place, but they are not part of the best practices tool set. So here's a quick overview of how the 5 that we are covering go together. Using 9.2 tools, building fluid pages to put the fields on the pages. Fluid development is how we would do that. Around that, we have the navigation that we're going to be providing. That should be done in an activity guide. That's the best way to get a guided look and feel for the end user using delivered 9.2 tools. You're going to need approvals and notifications. For this, we'll use AWE, Delivered Robust Approval Engine for PeopleSoft. Inside AWE, you will need to determine who gets routings, when they get them, how they get to them, and for the how, we'll use fluid approvals. And what they see when they go into that approval, we'll provide with Page Composer. So you'll see this a lot here in the next 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And we've got 15 minutes and I have almost 30 slides. So I got to stay on a 2 slide per minute pace here. So fluid development is this one right here. A few things, the pros of the fluid interface is that it's the native responsive mobile PeopleSoft experience. So that's what Oracle is supporting. They're going to keep supporting it. And it gets more stable all the time, and it's going to be around. It's got broad support. One of the cons is that it's just hard to develop in, and it's the right way to do it, but it's a hard tool to work with. So there's going to be a training curve if you're not already doing fluid development. Okay, so the next piece is activity guides. That's the navigation frame around the custom pages that we would be developing. Activity guide is a conceptual and visual framework that's intended to help guide the user through a multi-step activity. So, and it allows you to save your progress at multiple points along the way. So there are a number of different looks and feels for activity guides. This is the one that I like best, navigation with a sidebar, and it allows you to present different pages of different content from multiple components, and it keeps track of completion as you move through it. So this is a delivered tool that is getting more and more configuration based with each release, and it although still is not quite completely config based. And we'll talk about config versus development here in a moment. But activity guide is how we do the navigation. Here's another a train stop layout, but just to highlight config versus development. This is the part of an activity guide based solution or form that is config based. This is the part that requires a developer. So you still have to build those pages. Like I said, we're using fluid development to actually put the pages together that are going to show up in the activity guide, the navigation of which can be configured rather than developed. Next step is AWE right here. So AWE is PeopleSoft's native workflow engine. It's robust, it is powerful. You can set up all sorts of different branching and conditions, and you can do row level approvals and all sorts, or line level approvals, all sorts of complexity that can be handled with AWE. The problem is still it's not completely a functional tool. You need a developer to hook the AWE into your application, and the updates outside of fluid approvals, which often end up being necessary, you end up coding. User lists, that's who you route to. Usually that ends up being coded. Conditional criteria to decide whether or not to stop at a certain step in the workflow often ends up being coded, and you have a lot of limitations around the notification engine. There are some new notification features coming in more recent releases of tools, but oftentimes it's hard to get rich text notifications, and particularly where you're trying to put form data into those notifications. Okay, so when we get to fluid approvals, fluid approvals is basically that got wrapped interestingly. It's a browser-based PeopleSoft app that lets an approver see what's on their list, and this is just straight up a good process and a good tool to use. And now it's augmented by fluid delegation in Tools 858. So this allows you to have a a work list basically, but one that is fluid and that you can sort by type. And that's great. You're going to end up having users who can access these forms on their mobile devices. So the last is, what do they see when they actually navigate to something off of the fluid approvals? And what they're going to see is a page that is built using Page Composer. So Page Composer pulls data out of the database to show inside the Fluid Approvals application when a user is approving a workflow transaction. The biggest misconception about Page Composer is what it isn't. Page Composer is not really a PeopleSoft Page Composer. It is a PeopleSoft Approval Page Composer. So the Approval Page Composer lets you build pages that people can see data in when they're approving the application. It does not let you build PeopleSoft pages or data entry pages. It's all read-only, and it's just to show the approver what they're approving. Okay, so this is kind of, again, our overall frame. This is that frame kind of expanded out to highlight what is functional and what is technical out of this delivered 9.2 solutions map. So you mostly are working from left to right here, and you have, as you're building this out, you're going to have technical work to get the form started. You're going to have functional work to do the navigation, technical to build your pages and fields, including your data and logic management. You're going to have a mix of technical and functional for approvals and notifications. Updating PeopleSoft is going to be all technical. You're going to have some behind the scenes work to do to build out your data storage and logs. To manage attachments, that's all going to be technical. You're going to have some functional tools to work with, including the PS AWE admin page and the activity guide administration tools. So with 3 minutes left, this is what we usually do instead. We use GTE forms, and actually this should now be 3.3, but this is what we do. We try to make that robust custom form development process more configuration based and more supported by configuration based tools. So you're going to be able to put pages on fields without a developer, and you're going to be able to do a lot more routing without having to do coding to make that work. Still some coding to do, but a lot more that can be done by your business analysts. And you'll see these green dots all through here. That's where it's, instead of tech required, it's tech extensible. And that's what you want. You want to be able to have your techies expand the config-based functionality as necessary, rather than hit your head on the top of the tool and say, oh, I guess we have to give up because we can't get it done. So you're going to end up with an application that can be integrated with the rest of the Fluid experience in PeopleSoft. This is the Delivered My Teams app with related actions drilling into custom forms, our custom EPAF forms in HCM. So this form page, all the fields on this page and all the items on this page were put there by a business analyst. And all of this happens inside of PeopleSoft. It's the native application, so it integrates really well. It actually generates Fluid applications rather than having to code Fluid applications. So is GTE Forms the only way to have custom Fluid applications inside of PeopleSoft, or custom forms? No. And in fact, as a consulting firm, we're happy to help you to build custom Fluid forms and applications without using GTE forms. But we believe we can add a ton of value and make it a lot easier to do so. For example, Princeton recently had a COVID requirement where they realized they needed a couple of forms to communicate with their students in the pandemic. They identified the need on Thursday, And on Friday, they had 2 forms in production ready for student use on their mobile devices using GTE forms. And that is a quick introduction to how to do custom fluid forms inside of PeopleSoft. And you can do it with the delivered 9.2 tools. You can use GTE forms.